Angela, do you want to call roll?
Frisch. Aye. Pearl.
Aye.
Michael.
Aye.
Romero.
Aye.
Zimmet.
Aye. Okay, and we have, I know Meredith, you're here for public comment, and I want to let you speak real quick.
I want to let you know that I'm not staying for the whole meeting, but I have to shuttle children like in 12 minutes. You pick up mine too. So I'm pleased to stand before you today with a healed right fibula and a still healing right tibia, both of which I broke on March 9th of last year. 5 days after the accident, which was 2 days after I got out of the hospital, my then 5th grade daughter was performing in the high school production of Peter Pan. Because my mobility was exceptionally limited, I called the school ahead of time and asked how I could use the elevator at the elementary school so that I could sit down front in the district theater with my family instead of the only other truly accessible seat, which is located in a corner by itself right of the hall, right where you walk in off the lobby. Like there's one seat there that you can sit in if you truly can't go down any of the stairs. I was told when I called a day ahead of time that nobody knew how I'd be able to access the elevator outside of school hours and that I should be prepared to not be able to use it. When I arrived, someone took pity on me and kindly tracked down the elevator key. The elevator opened into a poorly lit janitor's closet with no clearly marked exit and no clear path on the floor. After door number 1 didn't work, we made our way out of door number 2. I was handed the elevator key to use myself at the end of the night, but I couldn't get it to open the janitor's closet, so I walked on the ramp up, and by that point, I had been dropped off at the school, but the gate at that point was closed, so I had to then walk down. This was March of a very snowy year. Walk down the hill, and then like a week or 2 weeks later, this exact same thing happened when I went to my daughter's choir concert. But this was also, she was in every performance of Peter Pan. So this was, it was every day it was like, can I get there, can I get there? I'm not gonna bore you with the details, but if you want them, I have all the details. You can call or email me. But I contacted the school with detailed concerns. Dr. Malloy had told me he would look into it and get back to me after spring break. When those concerns went unresolved, I contacted the Colorado Department of Education to file a complaint. That's when I learned about a capital construction grant project that helps schools update their facilities to ADA standards. It's a match program. Aspen wouldn't get much, but it's something, and I passed along the information back to the district, maybe to nudge them towards some kind of a resolution. So I'm now 10.5 months out from breaking my leg. I'm stronger, I'm good, but this doesn't really affect me anymore, but I can't let it go. There is zero information regarding handicap access on the district's website. Try entering the word wheelchair or handicap in the search bar and you come to a blank page. If you are driving onto campus to access the black box in district theater, you can go no further than the gate at the end of the driveway. There is not one single sign that has information on how to get beyond the gate if you need handicap access. Not one sign. If you call the school secretaries and get their voicemails, you are totally out of luck with how to get past the gates. I consider myself fairly savvy, but it wasn't until sometime in May or June that I found out that there's actually a way. You don't just have to drive up to the gate and call and hope you get someone. You can drive to the high school, come in over here, and then there's an unmarked gate with a phone. That's if you know to do that. The first time you call, you get Angela, then you get Joy. I don't think, in fairness to them, I don't think they know when they're on gate duty, because I've called and gotten both of them and they have no idea why I'm on the phone. And if you get either of their voicemails and you ring Gary's cell, and the response time, whether you get a person, it's a drastic, it can go, I've sat there for as long as 10 or 15 minutes before. I'm here speaking for myself, but I know that I'm not alone. There's a girl in the district confined to a wheelchair who was late to elementary school, all of elementary school, because she and her mom would sit at the gate waiting to be let in. When I was going through this last year, one of my daughters had 2 kids in her class, both who had serious injuries, and their parents would tell me the struggles they went just getting to the front door of school every single day. No one apparently is allowed to have a gate code. My understanding is the health office isn't allowed to have it, and an ambulance has had to drive through the gate, and even after that happened, they would not give access to the health office with the gate. Then, when you're ready to leave the school, it's anybody's guess which gate works, because none of them are marked. 2 of them are auto-functioning gates, but you have to guess where the sensor is, and you have to guess in which direction the gate's gonna go. One of them, you have to get up close to the gate. The other one's about 200 feet back. And I'm embarrassed to tell you, at the Maroon Creek exit, how many times and how many phone calls to the bus barn and how many times I had to drive forward and back on how many different days just to leave the school. Like in tears, like feeling embarrassed because I must be an idiot. But there's just no signs. And the elevator in the elementary school is off limits, including to children in the school who are confined to wheelchairs. And I know it's off limits because my daughter's 3rd grade class this year is literally at the farthest end of the building. And at the beginning of the school year, when I was still having trouble walking, it was like I couldn't take an elevator. I had to walk to the farthest point of the school. I keep saying there's no signs. I did see one new sign go up in the past year, which is telling you where you can park if you want to go to a football game. So off Maroon Creek Road. It's humiliating, it's degrading, it's frustrating, I think it's outrageous. It's 2020, we're in Aspen, Colorado, and there are people for whom this really affects their daily life. I mean, I've regularly would volunteer in my kids' classroom, and then I have to sit there sometimes and explain to Gary why I need to come in, and I'm not sure why I have to do that. Why I need to explain why I want to access my kid. But something that I find disappointing on another level is the fact that this has gone unanswered and unaddressed. If I was going to Highlands, or if I was going to Dr. Zimmert's office, or I was going somewhere else, and I was calling the company and saying a customer or an employee is having trouble accessing the front door because of a lack of sign, this has gone unanswered since last March and unresolved. This isn't like, I don't think I've asked anyone to reinvent the wheel, just put up some signs, because to not have access to get to your kid's school, or to feel like you're trapped once you're in the school, because of a lack of communication, I think is just not acceptable. Thank you for listening, and I hope you do more than that.
Thanks, Meredith.
Thanks, Meredith.
Thanks, Meredith. Appreciate the feedback.
Okay. Do we have any other public comment? I don't think so. All right, we're going to move on to
Susan, do we want to make sure that Tom dispatches some digs into that for next meeting?
Yeah, so,
quickly? Meredith, thank you.
Thank you.
yeah,
You
and
wanna-
we will start instituting what I think should be our consistent policy for public comment, is that if it's not a public comment, and I'll follow up with Meredith specifically, but if it's not something that's on our agenda, then we will, find out who the appropriate person is to get the information, and we will follow up after the meeting for any of those people. If it's something that's on our agenda, we'll have them comment while we're on that agenda item. So that's going to be sort of the new process. So yeah, we will hear from Tom, and then I'll follow up with Meredith.
Cool.
Okay, so I think we'll just move to our 6.1 AEA work session. Art and Marnie are here, and Stephanie, sorry. And we have a little agenda here for us to go by. Do you have a certain order you want to go through these in? Is that good? Yeah?
Yeah. So coming to you probably almost a moment ago, because I scheduled the email, what is a petition that has been circulated around our building. The reason it's coming electronically is that the petition has also been presented to 5 of our state legislators. And so the physical petition was given to them, and you are getting the electronic copy. These are staff members of our district who would like to see the board commit to focusing on salaries. A starting salary of $50,000 would assist in recruiting and retaining teachers, as would raising the salaries and hourly rates of all employees. Aspen has, as I know you know, the highest cost of living in the state of Colorado, and we need to make a dedicated effort to make living here more sustainable for all employees. In the past, our superintendent has had the highest salary in the state, which we understand is probably required in order to recruit a superintendent. He or she has also had paid housing, a car, and other amenities. But our base salary for teachers and staff does not reflect the same priorities. A school district's budget is a statement of its priorities. I know you'll be reviewing next year's budget soon. Please keep salaries, staff morale, and retention in mind as you prioritize. As you'll remember from the Climate and Culture Survey, morale and feeling valued in your job were areas of significant concern.
Okay.
Okay.
I haven't
Okay.
received it, just
Yeah.
so,
Okay.
just so you know.
But it should be coming shortly.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, that's, we will look for that.
Okay, and then, I guess just as a reminder, January 30th, we have scheduled, and you mentioned this, either the last board meeting or two board meetings, that's going to be the planning session for the IBS negotiations and so, and I don't, and we invited the board representatives or whoever that was going to be to participate, so just a reminder
Okay.
on that, so.
That's next week.
Yeah.
First working day, right?
That was you and Dwayne, was that right?
Yeah, I think it's Dwayne and I, but I don't know the,
Yeah. It's next Thursday.
and what time on Thursday?
3:45.
Oh my goodness.
and Location here,
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Okay. Okay, great.
Second item that, and a couple times earlier this fall, I mentioned master contract and AEA's desire to continue or really start up conversations again about whether administration, board, and AEA is interested in pursuing that. AEA is. We did come across and found the work that the last committee did on that master contract, 2010-ish, we're not exactly sure. But if you would like to see that, what that group came up with, and I think, Marty, you have a copy.
I do have a physical copy
So
if
we
you guys are
could-
interested in seeing that.
We could get that to you.
Yeah, I think that would
To
be,
take a look and see at least what the thinking was 8, 9, 10 years ago.
I mean, if that's something that you feel like is representative of, or even close to what you might be interested in, I guess.
I mean,
If you have something else in mind,
It's
that's
a
not.
starting point.
Yeah.
And I think the main thing that AEA is interested in is being assured that they have a voice at the table over policy. If new policies, if policies are amended, if policies are deleted, that they have a voice at the table. And I think that would go a long way to, I think, assure or make staff feel like they had that equal representation in the district you're in, or at least the policies that would govern their workplace.
Like the employee policies and
Right.
things along those lines.
Yeah.
As opposed to board, I mean, policy goes all the way from board policy all the way down to.
Right,
Administrative
Adminis-
policies
right.
is what you're
And
talking
then,
about.
yeah, and so, and I know we've had conversations in looking at the way the policies are displayed on the website, and then finding policies that, we haven't looked at in a while, and go, wow, this might need some work. This is maybe not addressing the issues that we have now, or, so I think a review of, certainly in this process, whether it's a master contract or some iteration of that, certainly a review
Reviewing
of those
policies.
policies would be in order,
So,
which would be a good process.
so just so I understand, your idea isn't necessarily, you're using master contract kind of as a proxy for a review of all policies and putting them in one place? Or is it truly the idea of a master contract where every, word change or typo needs to go through? I just want to understand.
Yeah, and we had that conversation. We would like to see a master contract. However, what our goal is to have a voice at the table with what those policies are. If that is something different than a master contract, And, you know, we certainly haven't taken this to membership, but I think we would certainly be welcome to having that discussion. If it's that review and then some agreement or some, like a policy about the policies. Or
Yeah,
And
That,
taking a meeting with the
you
committee
know,
about the committee.
right.
Right.
You know,
So that's what you worry
Yeah,
about.
because that's what I was
Do
thinking.
you have,
I'm
The
just trying to,
triangle of AEA, administration, and board are working together.
You know,
and agreeing on.
I guess the other thing that might be helpful in this conversation is if you saw something from another district that they had implemented, that would be an example of
So in
something.
our research of that, there's literally everything under the sun, from a one-page master agreement that simply spells out any changes in the stated policy has to be agreed to by the interested parties, to, I know Stephanie mentioned that hers in Detroit was.
like this big.
Oh, yeah.
So they certainly exist, there are certainly lots, it's more a question of what are you guys interested in seeing? Are you seeing what was done for our district in 2010? Are we more interested in starting from scratch? Whether that's through the IBS process or whether that's in separate meetings or whatever.
I also have I just have a question about whether the traditionally or whatever, whether a master agreement is an agreement between the board and the staff members or the superintendent and the staff members, or how that,
I think it's all three,
It's
my
all three.
opinion.
it's the district and the staff members maybe?
Well, and that actually brings a separate question, which is it between the district and the staff members or the district and AEA members?
No.
Because
it covers
my
all staff
understanding is that where's your membership? And if it's not a majority, it seems to me we start getting into some really questionable ground.
Right.
members. Our membership is a majority of them.
Oh, it is? I thought, what we asked, what percentage is it? Of-
I can tell you
It's high.
percentage off the top of my head, but it's
Approaching
high,
90%.
yeah. Of
Oh,
staff
We
members.
want an award.
We let it work.
Yes, we
Okay.
I mean,
Congrats.
Yeah.
All right,
And
good
in
job.
3 years, including all staff?
70 years,
Yeah,
about
instructional,
90%.
okay. 90%?
I think Susie has a question.
Yeah.
So can you either give an example of a policy that you've seen that you would have wanted to update, or you do, because I'm trying to understand, is it the coherent governance policies or is it the administrative policies?
Okay, so here's one that's fresh. In summertime, there was a policy that was either instituted or amended for the paraprofessionals on their required days of attendance at school.
So that was an
And
administrative.
that they
Yes.
would now be required to be here on teacher work days with.
Certain.
Or accountant, yes.
Yeah.
I think,
I think-
We could talk about the snow day one too.
or work
Well,
days.
let me-
But it's
let me
okay.
get through
I mean-
this one first.
And
It's a
their
good- I got the
calendar was
example.
And
changed
their calendar was changed.
without their approval, without ADA's
And-
notice.
And they, there was a lot of pushback and anger coming from that group of staff members. So we sat down and we worked it out where this year, those people could, they could elect if they were going to, if they came those, I believe it was 3, maybe 4 extra days, they were paid, and if they chose not to, they did not have to come. A lot of them, well, anyway.
I got
So that was kind of the process if there was a policy decision, and I'm not sure why, where that came from or anything, but there was definitely some angst
Yeah.
about that. Had we had some process where, okay, we're, either the administration says, we want to change this policy, let's sit down and have this discussion, and then there's no surprises. I
Yeah.
think is the simplest way to say it.
Yep.
That's the one.
So it sounds like it would be looking at the administrative policies. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's something that,
And, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I gave in the early fall, I gave you guys some copies of other master contracts.
Well, maybe that's where I got the idea. It's possible.
Oh, in the early fall, I don't know, yeah.
Maybe that
Here.
sounded
You
familiar.
did.
Yeah.
You
I
did.
hear you, right.
You did.
Yeah.
I mean, but it sounds like even the scope from then to now has been even further refined, and that is to say, focused primarily on serving as some governor around the establishment and then the ongoing management of policies, mostly at the school and administrative level, right? So what you provided was good fodder for just a, hey, here's a generic set, and by the way, the one was this big and the other one was this big in terms of scope and scale. I don't think it's even that helpful to see another yet just kind of generic. I don't even know if the 10-year-old Aspen School District draft is that appropriate given the scope that you just described. It might be most helpful to say, if you guys are wanting the district to consider, maybe take a first crack at some sort of drafting.
And I actually, when you just were talking, the whole policy about a policy.
It's
piece-
weird.
Well, it sounds weird, but I like it.
You must be weird then.
Just because I think what would be nice is if we had a thing that says, all right, this is how we would like changes in policy to be handled. And if we could just start there, that would be less cumbersome than trying to come up with a manual this big. So maybe that's a good place to start.
And I think and I think I mentioned also too, this one that was back in 2010-ish, I mean, those people put in, I'm gonna say, a good,
Yeah.
I think that was a 3-year process.
I'm sure so.
I mean, it's a lot of time and everything, and I don't, and I'm speaking for myself here, I don't know that we need to go through that elaborate and time-consuming process.
Yeah.
Because, as we mentioned, our goal is policy, not policies.
Right.
You don't want it to be counter to your next bullet point, which is climate and culture, right? I guess
We wanted to keep improving.
Right. My only comment on the master contract is I would want to be careful that we're not tying the district into anything that becomes a legal, statewide, or federal change in employment law that would be difficult to make that, to abide by that because of a contract, so I think that can just
Yeah.
get a little dicey sometimes and
Right.
you're too detailed.
And that's why the conversation has to be the board and, staff and superintendent, because there's a lot of stuff we don't know about, just the nuts and bolts of
Sure.
administrative policy in general, so.
Is it, just a question, is it fair to say that this is more, it's an issue of trust, I guess, at the end of the day, right? That things are, that we're not trusting that things can be done or being done in a way that represents the interest of your group of stakeholders. So I think, more than policies or contracts or anything like that, what the real focus needs to be on how we rebuild that trust. And how we move forward in doing that. And if this needs to be a complement to that, okay, but I think that's the most important thing, at least from my perspective, is how do we get on the table, what are the reasons that that trust is broken down, and how do we make sure that it's prevented going forward in ways that make the district be good for all its employees and the administration and the kids, and that, can be flexible to changing needs that we have in education and all those things, so that, everybody's kind of working together towards the same goal. So just independently of papers and policies and those things, that would be great to focus on that as well.
Which
and
is
make sure.
I think it's a powerful statement of that trust for you to say this is something that we're willing to explore when it has been something that we have been trying to do for a long time with a lot of resistance. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm willing to explore it. All I want to say is that, when these things come about, that I need to have a policy about some other thing, it's normally because I don't feel comfortable with the current way it's been handled. And that's just, so we should focus also on that and making sure we have those guardrails in place so that hopefully we never have to use whatever the other solution is.
Right. And I think what you said, John, about the word trust and, environment and culture, I think this is one huge step that everybody could take. There's not a dollar sign attached to. This really is not a financial consideration, but it's something that could still be done that would, I think, really boost people's morale, and I think it also would boost their buy-in to their job and their district.
Which, my question would be about climate culture in this regard, and then just based on last year's study and all of that is, and we wrote a policy that we would like to keep, kind of measuring that. And so that would be a question for you all, is how we could do that again this year to sort of just check in and see how it's going. And
How to measure that?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, survey, we send lots of surveys, but if there's other ways, and we can continue staff office hours, but any ideas that you all have about just making sure that we're having that conversation and that we're getting the feedback, all of us are getting the feedback that I think we would like to continue. So.
I do know this, the TLCC, which is the
Right.
used to be TEL,
Yeah.
survey is supposed to be coming out to teachers in the next week or so.
So that's good.
That's
Yeah,
at least one
that's always
piece.
a nice, yep.
So Marnie, there are 8 signatures, we got your email, thank you.
Yeah.
There are 8 signatures per page and like lots and lots and lots and lots.
There's
of pages.
176 total.
Okay.
Does that give you the information you want?
Yes. I was trying to count and.
You don't have to count.
And I think too, also that petition, and Marnie mentioned it, but it was, it was interesting to write because we wrote it, we wanted you to see it, but it was also written to state legislators. Because we totally understand that they're the ones that hold the purse strings, and, we're bound by what the state's going to do a lot, and so we wrote it
Great, yeah,
to 2 entities.
yeah.
And if we can use that as a segue, because I'm supposed to pick up my children in 3 minutes, and I'm the one who has to do the next part.
Okay, yeah.
I have 2 pieces of information for you guys, and I'll just leave it with Susan, and she can pass it around. These are from CEA, the Colorado Education Association. Kay Erickson, Georgina Levy, and I went down last week and lobbied at the state capitol with CEA, specifically on some of that information. CEA's top legislative priorities are listed in there. They include buying down the BS factor. And their top priority this year is focusing on teacher pay. There is a bill, it's Senate Bill 89. It has been presented. It was formally presented last Monday. And it would, the details are in there, and it's complicated, and I don't want to misspeak, so I'm going to ask you guys to maybe take a look at that rather than giving you something that's incorrect. But the basic function is that it would create essentially a bank account. It would create a physical fund, not a physical fund, a fund dedicated to teacher pay. That would then be something that districts would apply for, and it is specifically tied to cost of living. So Aspen could significantly benefit from this. Like I said, where the funding comes from, how you apply, all of that kind of stuff is still being worked out in committee and is on, some of the basic understandings are on that sheet. But we would love to ask you to keep an eye on that, and if you would, down the road when it's a little bit more known, if you would consider formally endorsing that. And to that aim, these were given to legislators to ask them to publicly support public education. So I would ask you guys if you would be willing to also, obviously,
You get that.
but if you guys
Raise the
would
pay.
display
Okay.
that. And it's a stress ball, so when you're feeling really stressed in your meeting, you can be like, I support education.
We're gonna fight over that.
Be tempted to.
Okay.
And my
All
substitute
right.
recruiter really wanted it.
Thank you. Yeah, I got 20.
Okay.
Thanks, Marty. If
Okay, great.
if there's anything else that you guys want information on as far as the legislative part, feel free to contact myself or Kay. or Georgina. The last thing I would say before I go is that this will be Mark's last formal meeting as a president.
Yay, we're glad you're leaving.
You gotta stand up for
Yeah,
this
we
guy.
should.
He's been a while.
So,
I have officially come on as secretary, and we will be holding nominations and elections in the next week as to who our new official president.
Oh, great, okay.
So this is it for him, man.
Oh, wow.
Thank you all so much for your time. Sorry to.
Okay, no, thanks, Marty.
Well, given that, I would like to thank the board and, even previous board members that were here for working with the association and recognizing, we're all here for one thing, and we know ourselves. And it's all these policies, but it's all those little kids out in the classroom, and big kids up at this room. But, thank you for, I guess, making the association feel like it's a legitimate body of teachers representing staff needs
Right.
and desires, but I feel like we're rowing in the same direction.
Great, yeah, that's good, yeah.
But thank you.
Oh, sure, yeah, thank you so much.
Great.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to say thank you personally to your work. I mean, over the last, I've been up here only for 3 years, but we've done collectively across the board through the administration with the AEA representation. Think about where we've been. We have a ton of distance still to go. But when we speak about, trust and confidence in one another, we've done a ton of good work together, and it's obviously directly attributable to recruiting and retaining quality teachers and quality staff. That's goal number one. And think about the salary, just kind of redefinition, that whole schedule, completely redefining that, and then that dramatic, 5.25 at the time, 5.25 increase that you guys helped to advocate. The following year, a 6% increase that you guys helped to advocate, and kind of bring that together. The climate and culture, you helped to author and execute. You helped to author and execute the work, that very important work that came out of climate and culture, which clearly is it's a baseline now from which to work and from which to build relationships and rebuild trust and confidence within the organization, right? So that's huge groundwork that we have now invested together. It needed to be underscored that the leadership of AA and the officers, and Mark, your long tenure there is very much appreciated, and now that obviously the tenure of others on that on the executive staff, wildly important as we move forward now, not only for Senate bill actions and hopefully some mechanisms for increased teacher salaries, but what we can do right here, right now, and what we can do for the next several years to get to the goal. The solution is going to be originated right here, and we can sure as hell be really good at that, and appreciate, as you said, it's been good alignment and a lot of good work together, so thank you. Well done.
Hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. That's great.
And then we just have one other agenda item, and that's the housing survey, which Tom has kind of, I think, started, or has a draft, and I don't know if you've shared it.
Yeah, I'm not sure, these guys didn't get, Kay has been on that task force, and so the most recent version was uploaded to her.
Yeah, so
So I'm in the dark.
yeah, Tom sent,
Sort of in the dark.
I think.
Our housing task force is
Yeah,
looking at a lot of things. Well, one of the first things we're doing is we've generated a survey, just asking a gazillion questions about your interest in housing and your current state of housing and what you might consider viable housing going forward. So that survey is about ready to go out. So.
and I would just say, I just was thinking, it might be nice to know if they currently are using APSHA or Snowmass Village housing, if they're in some other employee housing other than ours, would be.
Okay.
It's going to help further shape and refine the facilities master planning, which is obviously a component of the larger strategic planning. But as opposed to understanding, housing is good, I want more. That's check, we got that. But it might be able to further refine,
What type and,
right,
yeah,
scope, scale,
where and.
categories, that's right, composition.
Well, those-
Said another way, Steph, it's wildly important for that one to also be responded to. We'd love to have 100%, because I mean, it's like, who
Yeah.
doesn't want to talk about housing,
Yeah.
So
right?
please take the housing survey.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
Well,
Great
folks,
message.
we want everybody to take it, it's not just
Yeah.
those who are looking
Right,
for
everybody.
housing, but-
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you
Super
wanna know.
important.
Yeah.
And are we trying to ask some of those same questions as our previous housing
Yes.
surveys so
Yeah.
that we can compare?
We've used that as a sort of a baseline for the questions. We've changed the iterations of the range of dollar amounts that were asked in 2010. We bumped those up a little bit.
So thank you for that. Pushing.
Maybe a little bit,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know that it's really wanted, I know that
Yeah.
the people on the committee have spoken to me about it and how important they think it is, so
Great. Yeah, that would be
that'll
helpful.
be, yeah,
It'll be in your inbox shortly.
Great.
perfect.
And
Okay.
as a request for 100% participation also on the TLCC,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and those will come
Yeah.
into our mailboxes, I think Marnie
I
said
think-
next week, we
Yeah.
should get those out. And then all the
Yeah.
reps in each building are responsible for making
And-
sure that works.
Then we're also going to be talking in a little bit about our superintendent search in the advisory group. And we want to have,
Participation.
obviously, staff participation in that as well. So there will be information coming out about an initial meeting and then some sort of, a couple of organizational meetings for that group. And just sort of what their role will be and all of that. But I just wanted to ask you all to encourage staff members to participate in that as well. Anything else, guys? Thanks so much.
Next,
thank you very much.
see the team next Thursday, right?
Yeah,
3:45?
having this time is.
Shed a tear.
Oh, stop
Well, we
it.
appreciate it, for sure.
Again, that's Tom, that's next Thursday at 3:45.
And we're scheduled till 7 PM, then we
Great.
need that much
Can
time.
we go to 8? Let's make it 8.
We can go to, I'll go as long as you will.
I mean, we're
Hey,
We're on track tonight to be
I'm
your-
sleeping out there now.
We're
we're
on
going to
track
move on
tonight.
to our audit presentation. Paul? welcome.
Paul.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I just stick with you this city of Aspen, instead of Aspen School. Do you guys want me to put these financials up on the screen, or are you comfortable?
We have them in front of us.
Unless
So-
people in the
People in the audience,
audience would like to.
can you plug it real quick?
Yeah.
Plug it in real quick? Is that okay, Susan?
It's the
Sure,
one that
absolutely.
is in our,
Yeah, the preliminary draft.
It's a good suggestion, thank you. So folks can follow.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think most of you know me, at least from one other meeting, but Paul Bacchus, CPA, live in Edwards, Colorado, with firm McMahon Associates. We're a weird firm. We don't do any tax work, all we do is financial statement audits. So we have 20 CPAs that just do financial statement audits, kind of pretty much in Central Rockies. I do have a lot of school district clients, probably 20 plus school district clients. I have 2 left, my last 2 this week, you guys, and one other one that coincidentally also had a turnover in their CFO position. So that just kind of throws stuff behind. There's a lot of stuff that we actually spend time doing when we do the audit. I kind of won't go through all of that. How audits are done is changing quite a bit. So in the past, we would kind of pull random samples to verify transactions. Now it's kind of pulling your whole database and risk weighting transactions. So as an example, we can pull all your purchasing card transactions and we can say, okay, we're in these on a weekend. Let's rank those higher. Did somebody post a transaction to an account that they normally don't post to? That gets weighted higher. So there's a lot more IT in it than there kind of used to be. I'm really gonna, I know you guys have a heavy schedule, so I'm gonna really kind of blow through the financial statements, so to speak. and concentrate maybe more on the letter. I'll just point out a couple things. The independent auditor's report would be referred to as an unmodified opinion, means the financial statements are materially correct, and you can rely on them to make financial decisions. For those of you that are new, there are two sets of financial statements in here. One is called modified accrual, and it's on the fund basis, which is how you as a board budget. It's what you as a board have control over. The other set is full accrual, like a business would keep their books, and that's the fund that you have control over plus primarily para, which you have no control over. So that's all legislature. We have to take their transactions and push them down to your financial statements. So I'm not going to really focus on the full accrual because I think the numbers really look wacky this year because of all these changes to para.
Yeah.
The legislature passed these laws and we have to take, well, we don't, the actuaries take and project that out over 30 years and you have these huge swings. So what I'm going to do is focus on what you as a district have control over, and that is on page C5. So those of you that are new, every school district in BOCES in the state of Colorado has the same chart of accounts, largely the same funds, and the financial statements pretty much look the same, and that's because ultimately all this data is going to get transmitted to CDE. CDE can then pull all the data together and say, hey, legislature, we spent, you know, $12 million on third grade staplers. So you have kind of three main funds and then a bunch of smaller funds that get added together. So the general fund is kind of your day-to-day operating fund that's going to pretty much determine your fiscal health. The debt service funds where you collect property taxes and make your debt payment. Think of your debt payment like a mortgage on a house. You build a building, you issue debt. They get traded all over the world, but really we just have to make sure we make our payment. Then we have a capital reserve fund. The purpose of the capital reserve fund is kind of to move capital items out of the general fund so that theoretically you don't get these big swings in expenditures in the general fund. You can kind of push those over and spend them out of the capital projects fund. And then a bunch of little funds that get added together, student activity, things like that get added together and pushed here. So, money comes in. For most districts, it's made up of kind of two sources: property taxes, specific ownership taxes, which is the tax you pay when you register your vehicle, and then equalization, which is state income. So Aspen's primarily a property tax dependent district. Keep in mind, you collect property taxes March, April, May, and we're dealing with June 30th financials here. So that means you've collected all your property taxes, then you gotta get all the way through the year until you're gonna collect a whole bunch more starting in February, March taxes. So took in 28,365,000 in the general fund, 36 million across all our governmental funds. This wouldn't include a couple little funds that are like your employee housing and insurance, but really it's because those are shown somewhere else. But then we have expenses that go out. They're in these functional categories required by CDE. So on the general fund, we had 28,365,000 come in. We had 28,240,000 going out, and then we have some transfers back and forth between funds. This last year, you transferred out 1.5 million. Most of it went to capital projects fund, largely for the turf project. So keep in mind, because that's kind of an unusual transaction. So we started the year with 8,088,000. Think of that, that's your fund balance, but think of that as cash in the bank plus what you're going to collect shortly after year end, less what you owe at year end in short term, like accounts payable. So it's pretty much cash in the bank. So we started with 8 million. We used 1.4 million of that. So you ended the year with 6,668,000. Okay, across all our funds, we start with 18 million. We use 1.7. We end with 16,705,000. I point that out because it's been a while since you guys have drawn down that fund balance to the 6 million, and I'll show you another place you can look at that. I just think it's important to know kind of where you're at. This is again at June. I haven't looked at your budget for the current year you're in. We kind of ignore the budget. We worry about the actual. So I do like to take this 6.6 million and divide it by the 28 million that you spent. Really, it should be the 28 million plus this 1.5. So we'll call it almost 30 million. That's 23%, almost 24%. It's a little hard to compare district to district because districts that get equalization, you get that monthly via wire. And so you kind of know your cash flow. If you're property tax dependent like you guys are, and honestly most of the resort areas are, you kind of have to have higher fund balance reserves. So just keep that in mind. I usually say, one of the things you have to consider is you have to have enough fund balance to get through the year, make all your, payrolls and paychecks until you start collecting property taxes again. If you don't, we do have a lot of districts that participate in a state loan program where the state will provide you funding. But usually I use that as kind of my benchmark of, if you look at your cash balance now, how much do you have? Because that's really going to tell you what your true maybe excess is. So then there's a lot of other information in here. There's the district housing fund that's shown a little differently. And then student activity. There is the 3 charter entities right here that are handled a little differently also. But really it's the general fund that's going to determine your fiscal health. If you scroll down to, I just thought it would be worth looking at that. So there's a lot of information in the footnotes. I really don't know that you want me to spend a lot of time on them. A lot of it's para information. There's budget actual statements. But there's the statistical information, which is actually from audited information, but it's prepared by your staff, and we don't actually audit because we don't go back and look at each year. Let's take a look. Sorry, I'm a little more used to my computer. Right here is.
What page is that one?
G4.
Except for that's not the page. Okay, sorry, G3. We can play Battleship. Go to G3. So this is your general fund, and then I showed you that fund balance, that ending fund balance is 6 million right there. Okay, it's broken up in a couple different categories. We have non-spendable, which means you had some prepaid insurance, you can't spend that, so that gets kicked out. And then we have some restricted and committed funds. Most of that is restricted is going to be like your Tabor reserve and maybe some other reserves. Committed, I actually don't recall. I'd have to look at a different footnote to tell what committed is. But I wanted to point this up here. Here's your 6.6 million. And you can kind of scroll back through 8 million, 8 million, 8 million, 8 million, 8 million, 9 million, 9 million, 7 million. So at least going back to 2010, you haven't been that low. I just want to point that out. It's not that, districts build fund balances up, it's perfectly fine to pull them back down, but you just do have to keep that in mind, that you're using your fund balance. Any questions on the financial statements? I'm happy to go into more detail, or there is the letter, and that's probably
Spend time on the letter.
applicable.
Yeah, that's what I was
But
gonna
I thought
It
it
says
would be-
presents fairly, right? Is that all we need to know?
say.
Well-
We usually do a management letter, right?
Yeah, governing board letter. I'm not sure where it is in here.
It's not in this.
Okay. So there's a letter that goes along, and just be aware, it's, we had a lot of changes last year. I think you guys are aware, we kind of met and gone through this once, but there's a couple items. It has items that we have to communicate to you as the governing board. It just says what's kind of the biggest estimates in your financial statements. The biggest estimate in here is the para liability, but that isn't in the numbers that I showed you. The numbers I showed you are much more of a cash basis. But if you were looking at the full accrual financials, it has a big para liability on there. and that's a huge estimate.
But it's not our liability.
It's not legally your liability, but you will pay it. Does that make
Okay.
sense? So how they will pay it is they will, so when I started auditing, in '92, the employees paid in 8% and the districts paid in 9.2. So, and you compare that to say Social Security at, 6.2 employee employer. So it was a third higher, and, the district was still, almost double, but now, with all these changes, it's gone up every year, kind of the last decade.
20.
You'll tap out, I believe, at 11 for the employee and 23,
I think it's
23 for the district.
Okay.
So, I
It's
mean, on a
already
grand
21.
scale, I can just tell you, it's apparent when you look at district financial statements, every district is getting squeezed on the salaries by para. I mean, think about it. In districts, everyone wants to spend money in the classroom, and by and large you do. It's 85% of your expenditures is going to be on payroll. So think of 85% of that 20 whatever million in expenditures as payroll, and then you can take 10% of that, or even more than that really now, 12% of that, and that's the additional amount that the districts are paying compared to kind of what they used to. Unfortunately, you don't have any control over that. That's all the legislature.
But it is going to be capped at 23.
That's what they say now.
Okay.
It has a stabilizer mechanism in it. It could change, but.
Okay.
So anyways, but the para pension liability is the biggest estimate in there. And basically what we have to do is we get the numbers from para, and then we divide it out by the districts based on how many employees you have participating in the pool compared to all the other parties in the school district pool. And then we book that liability and the transactions on your financial statements, or we help your staff do it. We are required to inform you of any difficulties encountered performing the audit. It was a bit of a challenging year. I feel bad because I know we were just kind of on you trying to get this done, and you're like,
Hiding in the back.
yeah, under a desk sucking your thumb. But you had turnover at key positions, and when you have that, you're usually going to have problems. So if it makes you feel any better, I do have a district that's worse than this is. So, because there is going to be some issues that you're going to see on this letter. So there was a lot of journal entries that occurred.
That doesn't make me feel any better. Is it fair to say that we're getting better?
Well,
Last year, so.
first of all, auditors don't say anything nice. Second of all, we looked at June 30th. I assume that things will get better just by the fact that we have somebody sitting at that desk, but
Okay.
I'll tell you that next year.
Next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I would suggest us to do is let him go through this letter, and then when we have it, then in our next board meeting, maybe in the notes beforehand, let me address each one of those action plans that we have.
That's a great idea.
So,
Yep, that sounds great.
So we have to disclose corrected misstatements, which is basically journal entries, and there was quite a few journal entries this year, not surprisingly. And you, I think, did a great job on catching up on the cash and the bank recs and all that. There still was a lot of stuff that we kind of worked together and rolled through and got adjusted so that the financial statements could have an unmodified opinion. There is some recommendations. Look, I'm crazy about activity funds. I'm just telling you, there's always a lot of cash in them, and they tend to cause reputational risk, not necessarily material financial risk, if something gets used inappropriately. So this last year, maybe at the end of the year, before you went to e-funds to collect a lot of payments through credit cards. And so you have e-funds where the cash kind of comes in, then you have Power School, which is where power lunch and kind of all the fees and stuff. And then we have iVisions, which is the financial software we have. We just need to make sure we have a reconciliation between those three. Payroll was a bit of a challenge because we did have a fair amount of turnover at payroll. And so we didn't necessarily have good segregation of duties between who does what. Really, we want to make sure that no one person can process a transaction from start to finish. And I think that's more just honestly having a leader at the front of the ship steering. But when we notice a problem during the year, we bring it to your attention. So included in that was when we were looking through some of the payroll transactions. So we do this, we pull the whole data dump, and then we do, it's kind of, I don't know, it's called a regression analysis, where like we can compare, it visualizes every paycheck for every employee of the district, and it puts a dot kind of on a line for gross payroll and net payroll. And then you can kind of see any outliers that are outside of that. I don't know if I'm describing it correctly. But, and so we did notice that there was one employee that didn't have Medicare taken out of his paycheck, which isn't ideal. I believe that has been corrected. But again, we pointed it out to you. And it sounds like maybe there was some people that started prior to having background checks. I believe the background checks ultimately were performed, but we'd rather have those prior to employees starting. And then it was kind of hard to find documentation of employee deductions, if they're approving a 403B contribution and they're pulling out AFLAC or whatever you guys have. And I think a lot of that goes back to having turnover and stuff just wasn't filed. And so it was hard to kind of find everything that we needed. Ultimately, we got to where we needed to be, but that was an issue. Preschool, so the preschool director was also on maternity leave, which kind of created some problems there. But they bill in QuickBooks, and then she brings over and deposits the funds into, and it gets coded in PowerSchool that way. And there's not really a reconciliation between QuickBooks and PowerSchool. And ideally, I don't know that this is a kind of critical thing, but it would be nice to get them on iVision somehow so that the billing was all coming out of one system instead of kind of having this other software system over here. I've been around enough to know when you have these other software systems, they don't interface and transactions can occur there that aren't getting captured in iVision. So I think that's something maybe not immediately, but definitely put on here. Same thing with food service revenues. So we want to make sure we're reconciling between PowerSchool, the food service PowerSchool transactions, and iVisions, which is your financial reporting software. FYI, there was some stale dated checks, unsurprisingly, so somebody didn't deposit a check or cash a check. That's actually kind of common with school districts, I've noticed. I think mentally people kind of do a, hey, I'll donate that back, is the conclusion I've come to, because I don't necessarily see that as frequently in other entities. Just be aware you do have the great Colorado payback out there that technically those should go to them. But either way, we would want to clear those off so we don't have stale dated checks on the bank reconciliation. But I was overjoyed we got a bank reconciliation.
Be happy for the small things.
Yeah.
P-cards, I think it would be good to kind of formalize a P-card policy. As I said, we pull the whole data dump and then we can risk weight them based upon common vendors, based upon whether there's a transaction on the weekend, all kinds of different things, dollar amounts, unusual amount of transactions. But we did notice there was a couple of gift cards, which, it's up to you guys kind of what your policy is, but I think it's worthwhile having at least a gift card policy because it's easy to go take a P card, buy a gift card. And they all appeared to be honest recognition of an employee, but it's so easy to turn that into cash that I just think, you know, again, it's not material, but I think you probably want to have some kind of policy on maybe gift cards, if you're gonna have those for employee recognition, maybe have them purchased through the admin office or something, and kind of lock those down on the P cards. We did have some challenges with reconciling, well, actually it worked out, but the journal entries that were getting posted on the payroll for health insurance, so, right, you write a paycheck and there's a journal entry that goes in Valley Visions, and then you make the payment for the health insurance. The amount that was getting charged didn't always equal what was getting paid to the health insurance providers, so there was a bunch of manual journal entries that had to be made. We need to go in and get that changed in the payroll module so that you don't have to make the manual journal entry. There was some open purchase orders at your end. That's not the end of the world, but we just want to close those every year at the end of the year. You guys are aware that there was some payrolls that were made late during that transition for payroll people, and that's noted in the letter. Same thing with there was an employee that was paid even though he had left, and that has been obviously been resolved, but that is obviously indicative of an internal control weakness. And it's really hard. You can have policies and that's great, but honestly we didn't always kind of have a consistent person to even implement the policy last year. Same thing with unemployment claims. There was a couple unemployment claims that came through, there was kind of nobody to answer them. So they were kind of automatically approved. And then there's 2 new accounting standards that are coming out. One will change how student activities funds get shown, and we'll basically help you with that. It's nothing big, I just want you to know. We're aware of it, we know it.
We did modify our budget
Good.
to show that change, yeah.
And the other is how leases are shown, basically, not only for governments, but for all entities. The Accounting Standards Board feels that signing a lease for a piece of equipment really isn't a fundamentally different transaction than going to the bank, taking out a loan and purchasing that transaction. So how it gets shown is going to be the same. It's going to basically show up as a loan, roughly. So those are the 2 new transactions. I don't know if that's quick or painfully long review. You guys can tell me. I mean, it was a challenging year, but I do feel good about kind of the steps you guys have taken to get the train back on the tracks and go forward.
Linda, you said that you're going to come back at our next board meeting and have a comprehensive set of work
How about
work
if I
schedule.
put it in the notes that you guys received in the write-up?
Right, based against
Yeah.
every one of those.
Yep.
And we'll get the letter, and then
Yeah.
she can address each piece.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
that sounds good.
So
Yeah.
going forward, next year on this, I'd like to we had this letter earlier on than today, and then we address those things prior.
Right.
So-
It's
Clearly.
gonna be a lot shorter next year too.
It will be
Oh, I
short.
know.
Yeah, it'll be shorter.
Yeah, we both hope so too.
Yeah, and I always tried to kind of get Kate, and I could never get her to buy in, but really it is, in my opinion, it's best practice look, we make mistakes like anybody else, but there's a lot of times where we maybe recommend something, you look at it, and you go, like this isn't gonna work. But I always feel a little better when at least it's best practice for us to include the letter and the management to include a response to it. So I'm glad to hear that.
Absolutely.
That's just something that should kind of happen.
Great.
The goal is to have a very short one.
Right.
So I recognize it's a monstrous report. I don't know, it's probably
Lots of pages.
however many pages, 90 pages, but that's because ultimately this is going to go to, what you have is preliminary draft, the
Yeah.
numbers are not going to move. The only thing that's left is that we will add 1 page to the end when Linda's done transmitting the data to CD and we kind of get an approval back from them that shows the numbers that got transmitted, agreed to the audit financial statements. then we're gonna pull draft off, and we will start submitting it to, you know, like this goes to the SEC, all the bondholders, the federal government, the state government, you know, banking relationships, insurance. That's why it's 90 pages, it's not just necessarily 90 for your consumption, I guess.
And at that point, we'll put it on our website too.
Okay, perfect.
So we'll
All of
always
the,
have a link, and that's, when people ask for financial information, it's always great to direct them right to financial transparency and see it on that link.
Yeah, and CDE actually goes out to every district's website and checks, you know, do they have their audit, do they have their budget, do they have their quarterly financials? And if they don't have it out there, they'll send you the board a letter saying
Okay.
that needs to be out there.
all those agencies you mentioned are interested in little old me, little old us that you're sending?
Well, when you built this building, you issued, kind of like the mortgage, so you issued debt bonds. And so these bonds are $5,000 bonds, and they're traded throughout the world in different funds. So, yeah,
I see,
so that goes there.
I see,
The bond rating agencies will look at them.
I see.
CDE looks at it, the Colorado State Auditor looks at it, we have to upload it to the federal government.
Wow.
So,
One of the other things too, like when Catherine's sending grant requests out, they need a copy of our on-card contract. So, those kinds of things, it's just reoccurring. So once we get this done, it's kind of causing a bit of a backlog because we don't have this done yet.
but I mention that because sometimes people are like, why do I have a 100-page, report? I don't need a 100-page report. And I agree, you as a governing board don't need a 100-page report, but everybody else has their own little section that they use.
20 pages or para.
Hey, Paul, G7, can you fly to G7 real quick?
Sure. Get there.
Oh, that's a good one.
You like that one, Linda?
Yeah, I was surprised you liked that one.
Paul, is that required by statute to disclose, or is that just a little asterisk you like to put into your reports? Is this a requirement?
So,
G7.
G7, I just want to point this out, if you look at the very top, see that unaudited there. So,
Yeah.
that's my way of saying,
I don't know if it's accurate, right?
This is all information that is available out on.
Of course. No, I'm not asking whether or not we're disclosing. I'm just curious as to the rationale and reasoning by illustrating the top 10 taxpayers, accurate or otherwise, in the audit.
So-
What's the purpose?
so there are kind of two sets of financial statements. Smaller districts tend to do what's called general purpose financial statements, and that would not include section G, or actually section, the Roman numerals, the very first pages, there's a thing called a transmittal letter. Aspen does that, which I think is appropriate given your size, that's called a CAF, or comprehensive annual financial. So you do kind of do this longer set of financial statements. And, it's a pain, but where it saves time is primarily when you do a debt issuance or a refunding, you would have to go back and get all that information anyways, so then you're going back 3 or 5 years trying to get it. It's just easier to kind of
Carry it through.
carry it on an annual basis.
Okay.
So
All right.
that schedule is determined by ASBO, Association of School Board Officials, and GFOA, Government Finance Officers. And they say this is what you should have to do a CAFR. And we could, at some point, actually submit your financial statements, not for this year, to ASBO and GFOA. We have some districts that do that. And then they will do an additional review and send you a letter on whether or not everything that you need is in there. And they'll give you an award and a press release that says, hey,
Okay.
you've achieved this
Okay.
high level of financial reporting.
Okay.
But it has to be done within 6 months of year end, so.
So this time next year, I'm moving away from G7. This time next year, we will have received the draft audited financials for this current school year. In fact, as you described, maybe towards November, December. Say again?
November-ish, early November.
Is it unwise for us to assume that would be any earlier than November? Is that an unsafe assumption?
I don't think so, not at this point. I mean, that's typically the district I came from, that's when we did them all in November.
No, so just for what it's worth, and I'll remind some of us and maybe share this with Paul, we're looking to the November set of questions of continuing a retiring bond and continuing forward for purposes of facilities master planning throughout the district. And two other questions. One, sales tax re-up with the city of Aspen. Two, the Snowmass Village property tax re-up of $500K. It would probably be very, very helpful to have had a recovery set of financials that prove and demonstrate that we now back on the course to recovery. Not in terms of solvency or otherwise, but just in form and practice and technique and leadership and accuracy. Because there's, right?
I prefer to get all the districts done in November. That's always kind of our, it's just,
No,
I
you're
hate
talking about-
dealing with it over
I'm trying to-
Christmas and New Year.
It was a very politically correct way for saying, could we get this in October? That's really what I
It
was
work for
asking.
you guys, if you guys tell us you need it at this time, but be
October
aware.
1.
I think it's doable.
October 1.
At least to get a preliminary type
Yeah.
thing, absolutely.
Thank
know,
you.
It takes a while for school districts to do some of this stuff, and some of it is because of all the para, information that has to come out, but it is doable. in
Thank you.
October.
Yeah, we'll.
We're gonna go from
we'll do
last to
whatever
first.
schedule you want, but
Yeah.
I don't wanna,
We're gonna be
it's usually
better.
not us that are causing the delay, I'm just trying to be honest.
Why?
No, it's not, I mean, it wasn't you
Thank
this
you.
year, you were swimming against the tide. I'm just saying, a lot of times boards will say, hey, I want that, we'll schedule it, we'll come out, and you won't have reconciliations, so.
Giddy up.
I found it really helpful in last district I was at, is if you schedule the auditors to come out in May and do some field work in
Yeah.
that time period. And then again, first week in July, it's a slow
Okay.
period inside the school system, and you come out and, you
Thanks.
find space to work and all that good stuff.
And most of that, honestly, though, now is getting the data and running it through our software.
Yeah.
Mid-year, so.
It's like that.
Uh-huh.
Next time
So
around.
nice now.
I'm joking, of course. Thank you, though. That's good. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, we have a lot of this.
Sound good.
Any other questions?
Nope. Oh, yeah.
For Paul, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And Thank
Thank
you
you,
for your
Paul.
hard work. Linda, thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
So, I believe once you're done with this, you'll give them a final copy, and then somebody would make a motion to accept it, just for the record.
Okay.
And then we know we're good to go on getting it sent to everybody.
Do we have a timing issue with that? Wasn't there a time that we had to do it by, or was that at the end of February?
We gave us a 60-day.
We have a 60 Okay.
But I'd like to get this,
Next.
I think it should be on the agenda next meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
and I mean, I wouldn't anticipate coming back, but if you decide for some reason there's some question you thought of.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you, Paul.
Wonderful.
Thanks, the
Thank you
team.
so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Linda, for doing it,
Thank you.
coordinating.
Okay, we have our community school work session now. Thank you all so much for waiting. You want to come closer?
Scooch on up.
Okay. Do y'all want to just introduce yourselves real quick and then go from there? Jackie?
Sure, I'm Jackie Butler, I'm the Compass Board President. Compass is the nonprofit that oversees both the Aspen and Carbondale community schools.
I'm Casey White, I'm the principal at Aspen Community School.
Hey everyone, I'm Michael Hayes. I'm the executive director of Compass. Previously mentioned organization.
Adrienne Bradley, and I work in the Compass office.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having us. I think it's my role to start. So I'll begin.
Okay.
And then Michael will fill in and you can ask any questions at any point.
Great.
So, let's see, I'll just start. I had an opportunity to sit down with Tom in early August, and he mentioned that being a principal was a unique privilege, and I have to say that is exactly what it feels like up at Aspen Community School. It's also an enormous responsibility. Jim left some pretty large shoes to fill, and the school is in excellent shape. But that means that that takes constant tending, and as he would be happy to hear, if you're not moving forward, you're actually moving backwards. So I'm going to try to outline a little bit of our story that you won't see in the documents. So we are about, and as you probably know, we're about these three circles that interconnect, so relationships, academic excellence, and relevant learning, meaningful experiences. And when those three connect, we believe that that magic in the middle is what creates lifelong learning. And so we're always striving for that. So I just want to start off saying we're so grateful for the relationship that we have with the district. And it's big things like Tom, and it's small things like Reagan and Gary in the transportation department. We just have one bus, and it's so nice to be able to pick up the phone and be kind of talked through what to do when something goes awry. Heather in special education has been incredible for us. She comes out to our school and has trained us 2 years in a row in what was CPI and is now safety care, which really has transformed how we respond to students when they feel anxiety and has really improved, I think, the student experience at the school. Katie came out and came to our Veterans Day, and Dwayne's been out, and it's nice to feel the massiveness of our community. Sometimes we're up there isolated on the mesa, so we appreciate that. And Chris from the elementary school, Chris Basting, came out maybe a little over a month ago, and it was wonderful to have him. We were able to talk about some initiatives that he's working on at social emotional initiatives that he's working on at the elementary school, and I was able to share some things we've been working on. And we looked at the DESA, which is a way to measure social emotional competencies for students and to evaluate the effectiveness of the program. And so that type of exchange is so beneficial. I think next week or later this week, some teachers from the elementary school are going to visit our kindergarten, first and second grade classrooms and take a look at the Lucy Hawkins Phonics program that we've implemented. And on the flip side, we're coming to the letters training. A few of us are going to join the letters training, which is a way to look at how to address the dyslexia legislation that's coming through. So we really would like to continue to build that give and take and that mutually beneficial relationship. We're also super grateful for our teachers. We have 19 total teachers, kind of a mix of full-time and part-time people, and one incredible administrative coordinator, which is Cindy Sickle, which is probably the first person you talk to when you call the school. And really what the teachers want is to focus on instruction. So you'll see in the school improvement plan, it kind of outlined the 4 high-impact areas that we believe improve student learning. And that's what we're all about in terms of our staff development when we're together. Just developing common language about that, applying it, looking at each other's classrooms, making changes, and all those structures are very cool, but the best part is that teachers are talking about their instruction in their classroom, at the copy machines, and making coffee. And it's just an exciting buzz around how to improve student learning through our practices. So we're really honored that we received the John Irwin Excellence Award this year. And it's such a nice light to shine on the diligent work that has happened for years at the school. We're very proud of our literacy instruction, and that's reflected in our high CMAS scores. 73.5% of our students met or exceeded the state standards this year. And that's a trend that's continued for a while. But we are very aware that we cannot take our foot off the gas pedal with that. So you'll see our language arts goal this year is that every student writes with detail about reading, and that's the one sort of sub-score that we were able to pull through that we could continue to grow on while we also maintain the practices that we have in place. And that's actually a really complex skill for kids to read so closely that they can pull the explicit and the implied meaning out of a passage, ask questions, form an opinion, and then write about that in a clear, concise way. So that's no small task. And we're really curious about our math scores. They're trending in a direction we don't like, and this has been happening for a little while. And so last year, we were able to shift our resources. We did not add a person, but we added a math specialist position. And our thinking was that we would be able to reach more students with intervention and lift our scores. Our data is so, some 7 percentage points equals 1 student. So if we could lift those scores, that would improve our math results. And we also doubled down on the math recovery training with you. By the way, thank you. That's an amazing training, and I saw it's coming back out. And then we got our scores this summer, and we're in the same place, pretty much. So we're scratching our heads, and we're going back to the drawing board. We dug back into the data, and it really has pointed us in the direction of core instruction, not so much intervention, but the instruction that all students are receiving. And we created a screener based on the math recovery early numeracy skills. And we feel like across our school we were able to create grade level snapshots of where students are at in these early numeracy skills, and we feel like we found something. Structuring numbers seems to be low across our school. So in the kindergarten through the 4th grade, our math interventionist is now primarily push-in, and her role is to co-teach or work alongside the teachers to implement regular math structuring practices in the daily routine, in addition to the core instruction. And then in our older grades, our 5th and 6th graders, we double down on the time. Students are in math class for 90 minutes, which is almost double any other area in the school, or any other math class in the school. And we feel like that more time on task, we're going to be able to fill those holes and move those students forward. And then we added a supplementary 5th through 8th grade, in addition to the core instruction. And Alex is the name of the program, and that team chose that, and that's an online web-based learning program that's monitored by the classroom teachers, just to give students more practice and another glance at the materials. So,
do you know where that web-based program is based? Like Stanford, Nebraska?
Yeah, where's it coming from?
I wish I was on that team.
It's good. Just curious.
I can certainly find out.
They've used it at the elementary school too.
The same.
Program for extra.
Do you know the name of it? That's okay.
Yeah, lots of little gold medals and stuff like that.
There is a link on the school
Okay.
plan.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to, I kind of whizzed through this, but I'm happy to answer questions, and we may have questions for Michael, or Adrian, or Jeff.
I might, I would imagine you have questions, and I just wanted to highlight that in our folder that comprises our annual report, that we included several documents at the request of the board.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Within there specifically is our enrollment policy, which is letter B, our enrollment data for 1920, which is letter C, and then at the bottom of that document is our estimations of the families that work in Aspen that live out of district. And then
Super majority. I mean, it's right, when you add all those buckets up, it's like, whoa, it's a super majority. They're living and or contributing in the community here. It's powerful.
tells a story.
It does. It helps, frankly, yes. And with some of our community members who are focused on those types of pieces of data. Yeah.
And then finally, we have a response to that net position question.
Yeah,
which
I saw that
is
too. Thank you.
related directly to the unfunded
Para conversation at 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, just
Yes.
a moment ago. So, it seems that you all already saw that we have these things.
Yeah, no, appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Casey, any problems with that kindergarten teacher?
We want a full
She
report.
keeps me in line.
Here she's tough on her husband.
Right. About 10 days ago, she had writing with detail examples from her kindergartners. And you are right, she was showing me some of the work. It was like, whoa. It's, there's obviously not everyone at that scale, but there's a real definition and demonstration of just quality work. Yeah, and there's some bright little kiddos out there, and they're cranking.
And
Yeah.
the kindergarten teacher is exceptional.
I would agree.
You're being videotaped.
I would agree. I'll double down on that.
No, I think one thing I'd like to say is I think it's impressive how, partly probably because of school size, how nimble you guys are able to be to make changes that are impactful quickly. And I do appreciate how we asked for a number of things and they're all here, which is really nice. So, I don't have any questions because I feel like we went through it last time quite a bit, so.
Anybody else have any questions?
Jeffy, what do you think about the mobilization of the parent group? And obviously it's for Michael and Casey as well, and Adrian, going into next fall's set of elections and the November questions that we anticipate. You heard me refer to it.
Right.
Yeah. Is it? You feel
Well,
like
I think
we're
we're small, but we're mighty, and
Indeed.
I think our capital campaign 5 years ago spoke to that, and we were able to raise $8 million in 4.5 months. So I think that shows our dedication to what's best for our kids and what's best for our community, and that we're able to mobilize our troops. And as the data shows, we really do have a stronghold up in this community, both with parents and families and students that are at our school, but also parents that work in the district. So I think it's, like Michael said, it's a story. I think it's a very powerful story. I think it's a very true story. And I think it's a story that has a lot of facts behind it.
Yeah, it'll fit very well. It'll fit. It's
And
gonna help.
so yeah, we're small, but we're powerful.
So we're going to need to mobilize that, obviously, even before the summer break. We're going to have to start getting some committees organized and some definition around scope and detail, and then, get out on the road and start pushing it.
Yeah.
It's important. I mean, we are asking, just for its worth, the bond that we're looking to, ask people to approve is essentially a retiring bond. So, if you look at your tax bill, the intent is for that level of tax to stay on par, not to drop. Psychologically, it's not asking for this, right? So I think our combined set of stories in terms of what we would want to do with that, improve the facilities, comprehensively think about teacher housing, community housing, et cetera, those are all kind of really strong messages that you guys have gone through, and we can help each other out. That's the key in the last 3 or 4 years. I think we've worked through some tough times together, and that discourse helps to build and strengthen, I think, a lot of the trust and confidence together.
And I think you feel the support when you go out in the community. For example, we're just in the process of getting some permitting for a fundraiser that we have coming up. And people are very supportive. And,
the
county commissioners and the liquor board. I mean, they're happy that there is this there's this collaboration between the Aspen Community School and
Shared.
School District.
I'm wondering, Wayne, we might, and also Jonathan, we might want to try to pull someone into the FAB off of their board as well.
Our financial advisory board reconstituting would be that's a great idea. If there's someone.
I see, we got Matt, we got a.
I mean, it's further
Matt Jones
integration.
would be great.
I mean, clearly it's a primary source of your funding, and so the financial advisory board, having some representative that's really smart. Now we just got to go recruit somebody.
We like to nominate Matt Jones for things.
I'm nominating him right now.
He's the treasurer, whether he wants to be or not.
The reluctant treasurer, that's right.
I can certainly have a conversation.
Well said,
with him.
Katie.
We appreciate any time at the table with any of your boards and with any of your groups and with any of your policies that affect the district as a whole. So,
Right, yeah.
And the rhythm, right? And the rhythm of being back and forth, sharing and keep participating in our boards and our board meetings together.
Yeah.
I think that's also very
nice, yeah.
beneficial for board members as well as, just kind of
Katie,
being.
would you mind, would you send me kind of the time commitment and the specifics around that?
As soon as we put it together, yes.
Okay.
It's on the to-do list.
Thank you. And I look forward to, I think we have a work session in February,
Yeah,
or March?
February.
February.
19th.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
great. Okay.
we look forward to having some more conversations.
nice, yeah, definitely. Thank
Tom,
you so much
Tom
for-
and Michael, what's the timeline for renewing the contract? Is it by summer? What is the timeline?
It's the spring.
Spring?
Yeah, June 1, I think,
Gotcha.
when we need to have it. But,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Thanks.
it's in good shape.
We'll discuss
Yes.
the details of the contract, or at least initially at that February work session.
Okay,
Perfect.
great.
Yeah.
We're in
Yeah.
good
There shouldn't be a
shape
lot of
there.
surprises. I think we've stepped this along so that you have a pretty good idea of the working relationship. what
And the
you're asking.
concepts that we're
Right.
focused upon that kind of make adjustments on. Yeah, cool.
And then, again, following that conversation, you'll have a work session with our city council, which, at which time we would have a conversation about asking them to put some language on the ballot, which I would propose we include ACS then going forward.
It'd be great to have represent, obviously, yeah, with the council, so we look more unified, yeah, for sure. And yes, the contract might be in a draft form by then too,
Yeah, it should
right?
be, yeah.
Which was also helpful for
It's pretty far along
mutual
now.
confidence.
As well as in our next agenda item, we have a ACS ask as well.
Well, that's
So-
right.
Yeah, which is our advisory group for our superintendent search. So we're looking for representatives from all various stakeholder groups, so
We thank you
we
for
would love
joining.
for
Thank
somebody
you.
to participate in that.
You're in.
Group, and we will further define their role, but basically, as we get further along in the search process, we're gonna bring in community members and so.
Stay for the next 15 minutes and.
Yeah. But I
Good
really
segue.
appreciate all the work that you all have done, because it's really nice to just kind of get all this information and conversation going, and it's been very organized and thorough and really a good conversation.
Jeffy, remind us of the annual fundraiser
Yeah,
for,
so we have our 7th annual Family Hoedown, which takes place on February 15th at the Cozy Point.
you're kidding.
Indoor
It's
riding
fun.
arena.
It's money
good
usually,
day.
but it's fun.
It's fun. So that's why you have to wear boots.
I'm definitely gonna be
It's
there.
only money on the outside.
So it's a family-friendly event, and we have participants that come from Rifle all the way up to Aspen, so it's really become our signature fundraiser, and last year we raised about $90,000. So this year our goal is $100,000. Again, we're small but we're mighty. And we have over 300 local businesses from Rifle to Aspen contributing items to our online auction. We have amazing sponsorships from all over the place. So our goal is to use sponsorships to defray the cost of putting on the event. So any money that comes in the door or is raised on the online auction is just money in our pockets.
Great.
So,
It's a great event.
Yeah.
yeah.
Super
So
great.
we're really proud of it. It's been a lot of hard work, but people look forward to it, and it's
Yeah.
very well represented and very well attended, so.
Thank you.
Why is it only the 7th annual? It was going on 20 years ago. But-
And that is, it harkens back to an old fundraiser, which was a community school hoedown, and then it, died out for a couple of years, and then we felt that it really kind of spoke to our philosophy of being a true community school, that it's family friendly, and it's, kids from 2 to 90 are in there square dancing and having some
That's
drinks
great.
and fun, and so, yeah.
Really fun.
We resurrected
I
it.
see, got it, thank you.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you guys.
Well done, well done.
Doing a great
Thank you.
job.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Casey,
you.
thanks. Adrian, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Yeah, let's take a little break. So 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and.
Five minutes.
That's good. I agree with you. I need water.
How's the leg?
It was a blast.
How are you doing?
You know, it feels so good to take it off at the end of the day. I feel like Sisyphus, you push the rock.
I know, yeah.
Just so you can have more like that. Feels good.
Hi, how are you guys?
Fantastic.
You're both here, we get you both here today.
Oh, yeah, I think we'll get through this session. Yeah, we did, yeah, we tried early. Good, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've gone through it. Yeah, this weekend. Thank you. Thank you for that, Jeff.
No, it's my pleasure, thank you. I'm gonna have surgery.
They're gonna have?
Try to take all this stuff.
Yeah, maybe.
How much longer they do the replacement?
Another 3 months.
With Kim?
My
God, so what are you
trying to dive in and
be doing?
I'll probably be
I think
not
it's
going very
important
for a couple
that you,
months.
I personally think it's important that you.
Several braces to my crutches.
Yes, yes, and, right. And it went over to last year.
And now my first goal is
That's a big money. I mean, it's a big goal.
now I'm swimming to my goal is like
Right.
I told my son to take it home and by me.
Thanks for waiting. Sorry, it's such
No, that's okay.
long evening.
So that's what she's saying.
You ready? 4 o'clock out, so you're ready?
Yeah, I do.
5 o'clock.
I'll get to the edge, I'll do one lap, I'm grabbing. No one's looking at me now.
What do you want to do? Are we going to go public piece first or just go?
Yeah. Well, and
As long as it
actually,
takes, I don't care.
because the way that our agenda had been set up is that we
Attaboy.
still have a few other, like we were gonna try to do this earlier so that there would be public here.
Right, right.
We have like 3 other items that we just have to do as a board and then we would go into executive
Yeah,
session.
perfect.
Is that okay?
Yeah, you want us to do an update now?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
we want to-
Just a quick one.
Oh, yeah,
So that
that'd
we
be
get
quick,
it
yeah.
out there and then this is our communication.
Oh, we met, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we're
yeah.
best friends.
Okay, good. You had plenty of time back there.
We did, no, that was good, that's fine. It brings back our
Yeah,
memories.
well, good, yeah, so we'll just have a quick, update from HYA and if you want to.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know the protocol was.
You can just
Yeah, I just don't know what your format
Yep,
is. Okay, great.
absolutely, yeah. Close and we'll do that and then we've got 2 other little things in there. Okay. We'll do that.
And then I'll stay tuned to start the exam. Right?
Yeah, however long you need. And I did talk to
I love the vegetarian. Okay, that's fine.
but I also want you to know that there are, you want to what are we thinking? What is, you need to.
And, I'm amazed at, how much.
Yeah, lucky. Yeah, I guess that's.
So,
Trying to do
yes.
all of our work.
Yes,
is public.
yeah.
So I think
When I saw that,
most of anything that
Yeah, I
to get out there,
Yeah.
we can do.
Yeah, very.
Thanks for coming.
Just over there? Yeah. I got a little bit. I got a scope.
No, there's only 2, yeah.
I think it would be great.
Thank you. Do you know where, there are some, there should be.
They had
Thanks for coming over. Yeah.
curious about the next step. Said it's nothing to
You don't get hungry with all your hard work? No, I'm just waiting for the line to die down. I get hungry for sure.
I've never been on that.
Oh, there are spoons? I'm sure there's something.
Angela's getting spoons.
All right.
Clean, hey, it's nice to see you again, Nina. I guess it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. I was just talking to Katie. By the way, did I don't know, did Jeanette reach out to you?
No,
No. She will. Just to connect with her, just to say hello. You know Jeanette.
yeah, oh, so is she still, is she also?
She wasn't selected.
No, but,
she was like, hey, can I reach out to her and maybe see if she needs any support? I said, yeah, of course. Yeah, it's just.
Yeah, no, Jeanette and I, our colleagues run the chamber board together.
Of course, yeah. I was up there as well for a little while.
Yeah,
For sure.
I remember.
Yeah, for sure. How's that going?
It's good. We've got a really good group, and Joey is a very good leader. She's dynamo.
She's been in there for a while.
And Crystal Logan is now our chairman. She's phenomenal.
She and I are leadership Aspen classmates.
Oh, wow.
We go back to 1999, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Welcome aboard.
Yes, thank you.
We had a foot of freshmen on the first day. We went up the train right when they opened the CERC. Got like under-tracked powder, what a new snow. Super steep. Snowboarders, if you've been there, it's like the real deal. It's, that was great. And it was a girls' trip, so.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't get that much.
Okay, maybe we'll get started here again, real quick. We wanted to do, we have Max and Dallas here from our superintendent search firm, and we'd love for them to just give a little update on where we are, what we've done in the process and where we are, and then we'll have a short conversation about the advisory group, and I think our communications person is coming back, but she's going to just say a few words too. So,
Great.
Thank you for being here.
Good, well, thank you. And we so appreciate serving your students, your parents, your schools, your district, your whole community. And every time we come here, we learn something new from people we talk to. And we hear so many wonderful things about the schools, and we also find areas where improvements are needed. We especially appreciate the opportunity to meet with so many groups. We had 28 focus groups. We met with, I don't know how many, easily that many individual interviews. Dallas counted over 1,000 separate comments from people. And in addition to the culture and climate survey, which was very helpful to us, we had our own survey with not a great response rate. We find the anecdotes, the stories, the local color that these focus groups and individual interviews added were extraordinarily helpful in recruiting candidates and, in fact, in framing our screening interview questions. So we have learned, of course, about the strengths and many opportunities for students, beginning down in preschool, and not just outdoor education, all kinds of opportunities. We learned about the community support, not just for bond issues, but for the resources of the community and the way parents and others give to the school, and in many cases want to give more. And what else can we do? We learned how much the community appreciates the teachers, especially, and values your teaching staff, and how well you've done to recruit, retain, and develop your teaching workforce. They appreciate the attention to the whole child and the high quality of education. As far as areas for growth, there is a sense that academic excellence matters and that the district can do better. And we heard that, we even heard that from students. I have a sibling at college who's really kind of struggling, and I know how well prepared, my brother was. We've heard it from others that, there's a high quality of education, but there's always room for improvement, and beginning even in the primary grades, all the way through. We heard oftentimes about communication, and we know it's getting better and it's gotten better, but the importance of transparent communication, regular communication, internal and external, multiple media and people who can communicate. Who are your messengers? Not just what's the message, but how do you have messengers tell your story and share your story? How important that is. We heard so much about the need to restore trust, to value teaching and learning, and to engage the diverse voices. We heard it from the students. We need more opportunity for student voice. We heard it from the faculty. We heard it from SAC members. We heard it from DAC members. I heard it on the airplane with my seatmate last night as I flew in. What we heard, a 4 out of 5 areas, the issues of equity, and that, does the district really know that this is becoming an issue? Someone said, in Aspen you have 3 houses with 3 jobs, which I know is an exaggeration, but I thought that was pretty interesting how a challenge it is for people, and we do need to attend to those who provide the services. And then the last issue was behavioral and disciplinary issues becoming a more of a concern, I think, starting at the middle school, and the need for consistent systems and consistent disciplinary issues, consistent behavioral issues. And again, this came up today with Mike, who helped fit my ski boots this morning, who has a daughter in school and has been here 5 years. So people really like talking to us when they know what we're doing. As far as qualifications, I think Dallas presented 16 qualifications last time, and the slate that we will present in closed session has each of those. We heard the need for a clear, compelling vision and direction from this next superintendent. We heard about the importance of communication and being a presence, especially a presence in the schools on a regular basis. And the presence of the district office, connecting the district office to the schools, that was one of our screening questions. And it was interesting because several of the candidates we did not slate just talked about themselves, how they would do it. But we missed the whole piece about, it's a district office connection, how important that is. We know how important it is to be a unifier and to fit with a culture. And not just the mountain culture, but the culture of Aspen, the arts, how important the arts are. How important being stewards of the environment, how important the intellectual activity is here. And we heard, I think our very first focus group, one of the students said, we want our next superintendent to be curious. We want him to be a learner. And we heard this from others. And I remember looking at the sophomore and going, wow, that's very wide for such a young man. And then, the other 16 characteristics. We thought it was very interesting that not necessarily do we want a PhD or even a sitting superintendent, but somebody who has experienced academic rigor and who values academic rigor, but has also demonstrated evidence of solid leadership at whatever role he or she is. And you will see that in the slide tonight, quite a variance in that. So we did hit our target, just to close. We said we'd have between 20 and 30 applicants. We had 24. We thought we had 25, one pulled out. Actually, we thought we had 26 and 2 pulled out. We screened half the applicants in interviews ranging from 40 minutes to an hour and 40 minutes, I think, for one of them. And every one was a video screening interview. We had the same 6 questions and did some probing. So we will be excited about presenting the slate tonight and talking about the logistics of February 3rd, 4th, 5th, and want to hear more about the advisory group and how that fits in. So that's an update. And Dallas, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add.
I'm good. Thanks.
Well, thank you. I just want to say that we're so appreciative, and we know that you have such great experience in this in search process, and specifically with school districts, and specifically with superintendents. And we just really appreciate the hands-on, personal attention that you're giving this. And we've had great experience with you finding Linda for us, which is awesome. So anyway, we just appreciate it, and we're happy that y'all are helping us out. And
Pleasure, good.
and then our communications consultant, Nina Eisenstadt, is here. And so I just wonder if you have a little something you want to say,
Yes.
or?
Yes, please. First, I just want to say how proud I am to be on this project team. The school district is such an incredible, important asset in our community, and I want to work with you and help get better communications out there. From the outset, you have told me and you've told the public that you want this to be a very open and transparent process. That's been such a high priority. And so I view my role as to make sure that that happens. And some of the tactics that I think we'll be utilizing, I'll be helping you with press releases and announcements, spokesperson preparation, just to get the right communications out there. And I think that this advisory group is going to be a critical component of connecting the community and providing opportunities for engagement, because yes, we have to be proactive with our communications, but also make sure people have the opportunity to participate, provide input in a meaningful way. So it's communications and the engagement piece. I have been doing this kind of work for a long time. I was for 10 years the chief marketing officer at an international firm, and I oversaw communications. And I've had my business here, Aspen Marketing and Communications, for 20 years. So I really understand our unique community and just how important it is that we inform the community and give them an opportunity to engage in the process. So I'm looking forward to diving in. The materials that I've already had the benefit of reviewing are so helpful. The leadership profile report. I know you've done extensive focus groups and individual interviews and group interviews, and I have reviewed the climate and culture study. So anything that I can get my hands on, or any direct feedback from this group, will be critical as we work together.
Great. Well, we look forward to it. Awesome. All right, so we have in front of us Jonathan's, I think, very thoughtful draft of what the timeline will be for the advisory group, and what the invite might look like. And so I just would say, we want to move on and get to our other agenda items and get to our executive session. But if anybody has any comments or questions about that, we can talk about it now.
So, Nina, have you edited this yet, or had any input into the, I just don't know where we are in the process of the invite to the community at large to.
So, Jonathan shared it with me. I put a couple of edits in there, and then I shared it with Nina, and then that's as far as it.
Okay.
Yeah,
And I said we were going to talk about it tonight. So I thought I would get any input from the board, and then she can maybe spruce it up if it needs to be, and then we can start.
I mean, I think it's a good start, but I would love the pro to give it any edits that it needs. So.
And well, Susan and I chatted a little bit about this, and I think the question is, to what extent do you want to have stakeholders involved who aren't directly in the school community? I feel like I've seen a focus on parents and teachers and students and administrators. And how do you feel about pulling in more community at large people?
2 or 3.
And then the second part to that is just, I know this is on a fast track, and I think some people are gonna prioritize their participation if they're, part of the inner stakeholder group. So, just something for us to think about.
So are you wondering how to get that message out more than if we're looking for those people, or?
Yes,
Okay.
if we wanna actually, contact people in other nonprofits or city or county positions, if we wanna attract a wider participant base.
I would just say that, as we've done in some other, with the climate and culture study and and we've tried to, in our very amateur communications kind of way, get the word out about various things. And so we've sent things to the community school and to ski company at one point, and Rotary. And
Rotary, Snowmass, Aspen.
Yeah, APEF, and so we have groups that we kind of send these invites to regularly anyway, and then, welcome participation from, and we kind of have a makeup of, we want it to be balanced so that and that was your recommendation, Max, I think.
Yes.
As far as how many community members, how many teachers, we don't want it to be heavy in one or the other areas. So, that, I think that would be how we would proceed as far as, and we can talk, about what groups we might want to, circulate it with, but.
Well, I think it's important, I think all those groups are great. I think it's also important, or would be informative to have some recent parents who maybe aren't parents anymore as well. And we kind of miss that in this, and I'm looking, we're talking to all these different organizations. Do we have, or even alumni? I think it would be helpful to have some of those folks. I'm not sure how we best reach them, but.
So maybe the 2 or 3 at-large parent or community needs to be a bigger number if we're going to include both at-large parents, which are probably of alumni, and community reps.
I think we'll see who shows up. I mean, it's a tight timeline and a big commitment, so I think the outreach is almost as important as who shows up.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, if there, we can make sure that one or the other groups, hear that it's a priority, and I think we can work on kind of getting the word out. That's for sure. Each of us.
Just people who might be interested. Aside from the list of organizations that we talked about, I think. At least the ones I think will be interested are already, saying, when can I sign up and where? And so I think we'll probably be good. If we have the first meeting and then we don't have enough, or we're not getting interest in it, then we probably need to outreach, would be my suggestion.
So does that sound like
additional to what we're
So
talking about?
normal paths and then a bunch of word of mouth stuff.
I think just what we're promoting, the organization Susan suggested, what we've asked of the people who have come here this evening, AEF, community school, all that.
And newspaper, obviously in the newspaper.
And it'll be in the newspaper. And I think we're planning, we're going to send this out directly from us as well. So I think I would assume there will be fairly decent, because we also can't have 100 people, so.
Yeah. We want it to be semi-manageable.
Will the meetings take place in here? Where?
Probably.
Are you thinking during the day or at night, or what's your?
Oh, that's a question actually, is, when is the best time? Normally, we try to do things 5:30-ish in the evening on a school night.
And we got students and teachers too. Involved in this, so.
Well, we'll have to schedule the final interview. The idea was to do, there's like an informational / training session that will probably be, that the proposal is to do one after school and kind of one maybe in more school hours, like 3:30-ish, and then another one whenever at 5 or whatever works for people.
So these are either or when you put these down?
when I'm talking about.
When you say info meeting and training, slash training.
Yeah, I was offering
that
two
either- okay.
opportunities.
I thought you meant they had to do both, so that was.
No, I was trying to say,
Okay, good.
here's one day, so not
Yeah.
everybody can, if it's just one day,
Yeah.
then people get in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard, and so we can offer two. I mean, the thing is, we've talked about that we're gonna lead these informational sessions, so we gotta get it into our schedules as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think probably two is sufficient,
Yeah, and so that conversation that we had, I misunderstood what you were
Okay.
trying to do, so, yeah.
Yeah, one during the day, one evening,
Yeah,
early evening.
so we could do something, yep, that seems
Yep.
doable.
And then the interviews themselves will have to kind of be, we're gonna have to figure that out.
Yes, we will.
Between all,
Yeah.
between all of us.
We
At some
can't
point.
schedule those yet.
Yeah. But those will be
Step
the
at a time
final
here.
interviews that are gonna be,
Yeah.
a couple, a month or so away. So, like we say, if we wanna have these people participate, we're gonna have to accommodate to a time when they can participate.
Yeah. Okay, anything else about this? All right, let's try to, I would ask that our next agenda item is calendar dates, and
I do have a
few-
question about this, so who's
Oh, yeah.
gonna continue to spearhead this thing?
Well, I think we would want Nina to kind of give us some feedback about the invite,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can give the invite to Angela, and it can go out with some of the facilities, strategic planning invites. But then I think we should also have something that we can send to various groups, and I may, say,
Okay.
or,
Through her.
yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
I think it would also be wise to have a mention of it next week during the strategic planning. I mean,
that's
those
when
are-
the first meeting is.
Yeah, so maybe that's what I was saying. What I was saying is
On
like,
his timeline, he wanted to have the first meeting.
No, I thought it was on the 4th and the 11th. Next week on the 29th is the,
yeah, so here's what I was
did I
suggesting.
misunderstand that?
What I was sending, basically on the preliminary timeline, sending 3 invitations to the meeting to be held on January 29th before the strategy session to try and
Okay.
combine it with everybody already planning on coming to school. Have a short half-hour meeting in person.
Yep.
But
Just-
not the mandatory things you're
No.
talking about? Okay.
Then what
That's
I was
I'm
saying
talking
that,
about.
and for people that doesn't come, I mean, this is a get the word out meeting. Then, if a ton of people come, and how many people we get at that meeting, then I would say if we need to define who it is, in terms of if 40 people come and we need to get it to 20, then we're gonna have to do that the week of the February 4th, but we'll be doing interviews all week that week anyway. And then what I thought was to try and have one training that week where the defined committee can have one option to come there. If they can't do it that week, then they do it the next week. And then if they can't do it to either one of those, they can't participate in the process as we've defined it. And then the interviews are the second round. So that was my
Okay, yeah.
initial idea, but I guess my question is then, who takes this and, you gotta make sure the meeting gets scheduled on the 29th. Who's gonna be there? I know I can't, cause I'm out of the country. Who schedules the training on these other days, all those kinds of things, cause it needs somebody to kind of finish the process.
Are you volunteering? I think I heard it. Pretty sure I heard a volunteer. That would be awesome.
All right.
You'll have a lot of flight time. You get a lot of computer time
I'll
there.
be your assistant.
All right, but then thanks Suzie, and then we'll do it with Angela.
I think
I'll need your help,
everyone
Angela.
else
Yeah.
was planning on being there on the 29th. and
Yeah,
what
I
we
can be
spoke
there on
about
the
other day,
29th.
So,
Okay, and then I'll just need volunteers and then, I'll need Dallas and Max to help us with the information to provide at the
Training
training
sessions.
training
as well
sessions.
as Nina
Yeah.
to present it as well.
Yeah,
And I can help on
I
the
mean,
4th,
obviously
not the
Nina,
11th.
Nina, obviously I assume you're super prepared and energetic around helping to obviously communicate to all the constituencies and help with the, obviously both the drafting of this particular draft invite, but any other communique, obviously, that's why we hired you up.
Yes.
Amen. Thank you.
Yep,
Yeah,
no, I was worried less about
yeah.
that part's, perfect. The question is more of the definition of the other stuff. So, okay, I will continue to do it.
You're doing such a good job.
One part of the training I'd recommend that you make sure you include, and that's for the community members. Some of them may be very astute and have been through a lot, some may have never interviewed before. You need to make sure maybe Molly could help you with some questions that are legal and questions that are illegal.
Oh, that's a
Because
good
what
idea.
you don't want to do is ask an illegal question and
Blow it up.
unintentionally get sued for trying to do a good
Yeah.
job. So that's just a really important key, I think.
Okay.
Well, my thought was not to actually let anybody answer or ask any unscripted question. So in other words, if you want
Well,
to get a question, send it in ahead of time.
But it's
and
still
then-
good counsel.
Yep, no, definitely.
It is, because I can't keep people from
It's still-
Yeah. No, I agree, but it's just like we should have a controlled process there, otherwise the interviews will get out of control.
Somebody might ask a question, somebody over there's going to say, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Simple as it.
Good advice. Thank you.
No,
Yeah.
some that people
Right.
understand.
Yeah, and we'll do that in the training. Absolutely great advice.
Yeah.
And maybe along with that is a little bit about the mandatory requirements, just because people may think this process is a bit mysterious and don't understand when finalists can be announced and what can go public when.
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
that's something we should make sure the community understands.
Sure.
Yep.
Part of the
Absolutely.
plan is to bring them up to speed on where we are, we have hired
Yes.
HYA, I mean, starting with the basics
Yes.
of, so that will be definitely part of it.
Cool.
Okay, awesome.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Calendar
Right.
dates?
Yeah, we'll just blow through these last few items here. Calendar dates, when I just go through this, there's a middle school SAC meeting on the 28th. Somebody
I'd
attend
like
that?
to go to those.
Okay.
You guys can just hang out. We'd only have like
Yeah.
couple things to do here.
In fact, get
Thanks,
some,
yeah.
Get some
Thank
food.
you.
Thank you for coming,
Thanks
everybody.
for being here.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks, Michael, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks
Adrian?
for coming, guys.
Thanks, Nina.
The middle
Thank you.
school coffee on the.
Thank you,
5th.
Casey. Thanks, Adrian.
Thanks for coming.
Everybody's favorite week that week.
And we will all probably be busy on the afternoon of the 5th. So
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody could go to the.
Are we
SAC.
interviewing at that time, at February 5?
Yeah,
3, 4, 5 are the 3 blocks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So we're going to be missing those.
yeah, we might.
We missed the coffees is what I'm getting at. Yeah, the
Well,
SAC.
the coffee will, I think we're not.
Oh, it's 8
doing it
a.m.,
till
sorry.
SAC
It's 8 a.m.
The afternoon SAC we might.
Got it.
So if somebody can go to that middle school coffee in the morning, and then, Susie, you said maybe the SAC meeting on the 28th. So I think if we get those covered, and then we have our DAC people, are you, Dwayne
I can
and
do
Susie?
Feb 5 coffee.
Okay, great.
Cool.
And then the DAC meeting on the 7th.
I can go to that.
Okay,
I would ask if anybody else, I do have a slight conflict on January 28th. Dwayne or anybody else, did anybody else want to go to the middle school SAC meeting?
I
in the
can.
morning.
When is it?
Morning,
7:45 a.m.
on the 28th.
I could do that.
Oh, great.
Awesome,
Thank you.
awesome.
Cool.
7:45 on the 28th.
Okay, so thanks. Let's try to move to our second reading and the approval of our amended budget. This didn't change,
It did not change.
right, Linda? Yeah.
No, the only, I decided that really the fund balance didn't change materially from the audit
Yeah.
amount. So let's just keep it, less moving parts, move forward. I didn't receive any questions from anyone, so, I don't have any more to add.
We covered so much last time.
Yeah. So, any questions from this group?
I'd make a motion to approve the amended budget for fiscal year 2020 as presented.
Second.
Okay. Angela, you want to?
Sure.
Frisch?
Aye.
Maralt?
Aye.
Nickel?
Aye.
Romero?
Aye.
Zimmer?
Aye.
Thank you,
Okay.
Linda.
Thank so much, Linda.
Thank you, yes.
7.2, we have our board priorities and goals. we can approve it now, but if we, I think we should not spend a lot of time right now. So if we have questions, comments, changes, we could postpone that to our next meeting. Any questions, comments, changes?
I only had one suggestion with, starting with the DAC to form the committee. We have in here begin reviewing with the third grade test scores. I would just cross out the reviewing with third grade, that begin with that until we figure out how they're gonna interact and
Yeah.
if that's an appropriate thing.
That's fine. I agree. We can do that. Under academics, the second item.
Sorry.
The second part of the second.
We would just say, start with asking the DAC to form a committee,
Okay.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
Which we've
We
actually
already
done.
did.
which we already did.
Yay, success.
We can check that off.
Yeah, we can take that off.
Have coffee. We did that too.
Can you
Check
highlight
that
that in green? We did something.
Eat lunch. Okay, we did that. Tommy.
Take a shower. Check.
No.
Just
Cool.
All right, so everybody
Yeah, no,
good with the rest of
We
these?
spent a lot of time on these.
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
did.
So can I have a
Boatload.
motion to approve our revised boards
So moved.
with that amendment? That's,
Second.
I'm in favor.
okay.
Trish,
I.
Roll,
Aye.
Nickel,
Aye.
Romero,
Aye.
Zinnet.
Aye.
Well done.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have any changes or additions to GP80 at this point. Is that right, Angela?
Correct.
Okay.
Just a question
Yes.
on the goals. So then now to like move forward for these things, is the next step just to kind of say, okay, who wants to sign up to do X, Y, Z thing? Some of them obviously are group things, but I'm assuming to move them forward. And I'll just use one that I'm interested in, the OEA board policy, all the climate stuff, et cetera, et cetera.
Why don't, if you are interested in one of these,
Mhm.
if you would email me what those are
You
or
wanna-
what that is,
You want to govern that a little bit?
we will then put it on as an agenda item and work with you to get whatever we need to do going
Yeah.
to go forward with that.
So that, you know, if either, I don't know if we're gonna put 2 people per thing.
Yeah.
On ones that actually need to, like,
Right.
okay, well, somebody has to go get the policy, sit down and read the monitoring report, go talk to HR and see
Yeah.
if we can do salary stuff this year, et cetera. Okay, then I will do that. I'll-
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so go
So
ahead and.
everybody mail in what you're interested in
Right.
working on.
Collective, so.
Yeah, that's not collective. I mean,
And it's
obviously.
also something that when Susie and I and Tom and Angela are looking at our agendas, we will look at this to see, oh, when can we put this on and when can we work on
Yep.
this? And if you've told me you wanted to work on it beforehand, then we can
Yep.
do
Okay.
that, and otherwise we'll figure out who can do it.
Perfect.
Okay, that's a good plan. All right, so,
And just along those lines, the last year, what we did was, when it was one of our priorities on the agenda, we pulled it out of the consent agenda. For ones that were going into the consent agenda traditionally.
for monitoring.
Right, for monitoring. We would pull it out.
Okay.
Okay, great. We can now move to our consent action items. Do I have a motion to approve our consent action items as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Trish,
Aye.
Roll,
Aye.
Nickel,
Aye.
Romero,
Aye.
Zinnet.
Aye.
Okay, we
I
have,
only want to mention one thing on this. I would like to change the way the minutes are written. I don't know if, and I would just like to put action items and then anything that a specific board member would like to be in the minutes, as opposed to trying to redact what people are saying. I mean, we're putting everything online.
yeah,
And I think it's just not a good use of Angela's or my time, not very efficient, especially if we're recording everything.
yep,
So then I would do the following, we'd just say, okay, here are any key takeaways, action items, or anybody says, I would like it noted in the minutes that, you know, X, Y, Z.
and then we can add other
Yeah.
if we read through them as we're
Yeah,
reviewing.
and then
say,
obviously
"Wait a minute,
it's,
I think it was this way."
Please
Don't
put
want-
this in
don't-
the minutes.
Don't want them to be so cumbersome.
Yeah.
That they
Yeah.
are occupying too
How
much
much
of your
time
time.
do they take for you?
It really depends.
She's gonna sit through the whole meeting.
On the conversations.
Yeah, and then listen to it again, God help her.
I mean, that is a clear benefit of having that history in
It's
that
really
file there.
important. Yeah.
Audio, visual,
If you're gonna post that, then that's huge.
Yeah.
and then, letting the minutes be just that, recordings of actions and directions taken.
Attorneys will tell you that you really only are required to,
Record
the votes.
action. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's
I
right.
mean, I think discussion is sort of, we want to know kind of in general what the discussion.
Well, you wanna know in general what the outcome of the discussion is,
Yeah,
not
that's
the
more
discussion
important.
itself.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. So
It'll
it's not
help.
just action items, it's also discussion items, but it's what came out of
Sure,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
an outcome.
Yeah.
The board agreed to
Yeah,
X, Y,
there you go,
Z.
there's
Right.
the action, yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay.
don't want the tail wagging
I
the
think
dog.
that's a good idea.
Starting with this meeting?
You got it.
All right.
Yay.
Angela's so happy, she's like.
Just
Right,
for
we'll
fun,
review that
right?
next week. Good point, Katie.
All right.
Free time, Angela.
You got
I don't know what you're gonna do with it.
cruising right along.
Future agenda items, we have some things already on tap for February 3rd.
4th,
Mostly.
5th.
A financial update and our superintendent search, and we'll look through and see if we have time or need to make something a priority other than that.
Is it on here that, what we had talked about an update on the employee things that we talked about in the priorities discussion? Like what's happening with the middle school principal?
I did ask Tom about that, so
Okay.
we can put that on an agenda,
Yeah.
yeah.
How about
That would be-
follow-up from prior to, we need another executive session, right?
For Erica.
Yeah. And then the follow-up items from public comment and stuff, do those get a,
They should get marked. They should be captured. You're right.
yeah.
And if we're going
Yep.
to follow through with that, which is where we want to be.
Well,
Just to clarify with that, would you want me to put those follow-ups in the board report, the administrative board report?
Yes, but they don't get the eyes, they don't get the public view, right? I mean, they're in a public document for issuance, but we don't discuss them in the public meeting. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
You mean the follow-ups to the public comment?
We would need to pull it out from his report, right, Tom? We'd have to pull it out from the report and talk about it, yeah. But at least it gets captured there.
It's captured, so
Yeah.
how you want to take it from there is up to you.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Some
not
of
so
them
much,
will be resolved.
some of them will be resolved, there will be just information shared, some of them will have actions required to them, obviously, and follow up.
But one of the priorities is to build that process.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
maybe
right.
just leave that at that for now, and then whoever builds the process then integrates the ones that we've gotten into that process.
Yeah, because, it could
That's
just
fine.
become part of reports and comments as we just go through all the previous,
I would just leave it like, well, I just publish
Let's
it
try
in that
yeah,
way.
Let's try it, right. Yeah.
it's a start. That's a
Okay.
Perfect.
The other one that's on here is the climate, that I didn't see on there. I mean, it's on our priorities, but
As a future agenda item?
yeah, isn't that what we agreed, that we would review what the actions are with the culture and climate survey?
Yes.
Yeah, so,
So it needs to
Angela,
be a
will you
future-
add that as a
yeah.
future agenda item so that we don't
So-
lose track?
And maybe just, Angela, if there's things on there that were specifically like that, just add them in case we missed something.
Okay, from the goals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so,
Next one.
we can debrief really
Debrief.
quickly. Katie, do you want to debrief the meeting?
That's a review of obviously the business meeting process, not necessarily content or critiquing foul
We haven't
words
really
that
gone over
that
that.
Jonathan
Let's get asked
dropped.
questions when the
Yeah.
conference call.
So it's process effectiveness of the meeting
And we just
itself.
switch around.
Yeah.
And how-
We like to emphasize whether we talked about student learning
Yep,
or not.
yep.
So today, I do not believe we talked about student learning in relation to the performing arts.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry, that was,
It's okay.
sorry. So no, we did not talk about student learning, except at the community school.
Or impacting student learning.
Yeah.
Anything we talked about that will impact student learning.
Which teacher retention and
Yeah.
a work session with the
In my mind, we did, yeah.
and, you know, but,
Yeah, I mean, I viewed today's meeting as checking a couple of boxes on the audit, which I think I was very happy to see how well that went, and that we are, I think, on track for next year. Feeling like there's some momentum there. I think the community school report was also helpful, and I was very enthusiastic about how communicative they were and, you know, responsive they were to questions and bringing all of us, in particular, up to speed. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to our next step in the superintendent stuff.
Cool.
okay.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
it is 6:50 and I will adjourn.
Actually, no.
Whoops.
Call for a motion.
Or a motion, I motion to move to executive session, is that right?
Second.
Actually, just to end the meeting. Let's just end the meeting, a regular meeting.
Okay, I motion to end the regular meeting and move on to.
Second. Aye.
All in favor, aye?
Okay, so I'm gonna stop that, that's the end of your meeting.
Okay.
Now you already have an executive session scheduled, so you could just literally call it,
Okay,
and I'll just restart this.
all right.
And then somebody will have to come, oh, let me stop that.
Oh, good.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Tom.
Tom.
Have a good evening.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you very much.
All right.
Jonathan, do you want to learn how to use that machine?
I guess I better learn to press stop.